Hello, hello, Ultimate Wellness community. Today I am joined by JJ Virgin, founder of the Mindshare Collaborative, the most influential health community, and co-founder of the Unicorn Club for female founders. JJ is a triple board certified nutrition expert, fitness hall of famer, and four-time New York Times bestselling author. I'm honored to announce JJ as a keynote speaker for our highly anticipated Ultimate Wellness Conference, returning to the iconic Faena Forum in Miami Beach on September 26, 27, and 28, 2025. 3-day longevity conference. Thank you, JJ, for supporting us. I am delighted to have you with us. Really, really honored.
I was sad I couldn't make it last year. What a beautiful venue. That is, they really nailed it. So I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yes, yes, and we are returning at this iconic event venue in Miami Beach. And Miami Beach in September is a beautiful place to be with beautiful sunny weather. So hopefully we will have just exciting, amazing weekend, 3 days. And you are not only speaking, you're opening our conference. You're the first keynote speaker on Friday. And I invite all of our followers to join us in person and to learn from JJ Virgin, because she's going to deliver her speech Built to Last, the 3 science-backed strategies to drop fat, build muscle, and age powerfully. Very interesting. What do you mean by aging powerfully? Because I have heard from you that it's your mission to change this narrative from aging gracefully to aging powerfully. And I'm curious, what do you mean by aging powerfully? What is this?
Well, it actually all comes down to one thing. And I started unpacking this a couple of years ago, really looking at, what happens as we age. You look at all these hallmarks of aging. I think there's now 11. But when you really get down to them and you start to look at what can I do to impact this rapid decline we're seeing around the world in metabolic health, in the United States alone, less than 7% of us are supposedly metabolically healthy. And, this increase in osteoporosis and sarcopenia. And when you start to really look at it, you go, there's one thing that if you just focused on this one thing, you could help people be more active, have better quality of life, have better longevity, reduce all-cause mortality. And yet it's the thing we don't focus on at all. And the thing I'm talking about is muscle. And as we age, I'm sure you've heard the metrics, starting at around age 30, we can lose up to 1% of our muscle mass a year. But even that's not the problem. The problem is that we are losing 2 to 4 times that of strength and 4 to 6 times that of power. And muscle mass is how much muscle we have on our body. We want that muscle to be quality muscle. We want to be fillets, not ribeyes. But then also we want that muscle to be strong, and strength is really how much can you move something how heavy of a thing can you move one time, and then how fast can you do it, the power. And so when you really look at strength and power and quality muscle, it comes down to building fast twitch muscle fibers. And that's what we really lose as we age. And that's where that power comes from. So ultimately, what I mean by aging powerfully, when you think about what the general narrative out there is as you age is, oh, you should do less. Well, the less you do, the less you can do. Oh, you should downsize your house. Don't live in a 2-story house. Oh, you should, start walking more slowly. Don't go out and run. All these things. And the reality is, I believe it's just the opposite. I think that as we age, we should move into a 3-story house and put like the kitchen on the top floor and the bathroom on the bottom floor. It's like you should have to be doing more as you age to counteract what are the could be considered the natural things that happen as we age. And that's why I say forget aging gracefully. We want to age powerfully. And the way we age powerfully is to start to really focus on what do we need to do to build and maintain quality muscle as we age, because you can build it. And we now know you can build muscle, the same amount of muscle at 85 that you could at 65. And granted, you're going to have to focus more very specifically on diet and exercise and hormones in order to be able to build the muscle you could in your 20s and 30s, but you can still do it. You look at metabolic health, and there's really amazing statistics showing people who have the lowest muscle mass actually have the worst metabolic health. And in fact, you are better off being over fat and well muscled than being lean with not enough muscle.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is why what I would love to see, Julia, is instead of us going, all right, I need to lose weight, it's like, stop it. Instead, get on a body composition scale, look at how much skeletal muscle mass you have, make your first goal to start to support holding on to or building that muscle before you think of anything else, right? Let's look at
Mm-hmm.
optimizing that muscle because you know if you have more muscle, that muscle is this, it's three things. Muscle is what I call your metabolic spanx. It holds everything in tighter, but it also is the way that we can affect your resting metabolic rate. In fact, about 75% of your resting metabolic rate that we can impact is going to be based on how much muscle we have. So, this is a powerful way to change how many calories you burn at rest. And then we also
Yeah.
know that muscle, Yeah, muscle's a sugar sponge. So, if you're eating carbohydrates, you want your carbohydrates to go into your muscles to be used as energy later on rather than be converted into fat and stored on your inside your muscles, which is really bad, or in your visceral adipose tissue. And then muscles also, and I think this doesn't get enough discussion, it's a multitasking messenger in that muscle, when it contracts, releases over 600 different messages. And these can be within the muscle, next door to the muscle, or all around the body. It's an endocrine organ. And so it can tell your body to reduce inflammation. It can tell your body to produce lactate to go to the brain to produce more mitochondria and to the heart. It can tell your body to burn fat, to build bones. I mean, all sorts of amazing things. I mean, it's like if any of those things were drugs or peptides, and they are, people would be looking at how to use them. And those things have their place, but why not do as much with your own body first, right? And so,
Natural approach, yeah, because when we
exactly.
exercise,
Yeah.
our body naturally produces peptides, and
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like muscle is the single building muscle, and contracting muscle is like the biggest thing you can do.
Yeah, I also believe that we have power over our genetics, while the blueprint of our DNA is static, and what we can do, we can adjust our healthy lifestyle to positively influence the epigenetic expression of our genes. What do you think?
If you really looked at most of our genetics, we are in the lifestyle we're living now. We are going to flip the switches to have diabetes, heart disease, cancer. We don't have to have any of those things. Most of that really is what's happening epigenetically, not genetically.
Yeah,
So
let's give examples what actually influences our epigenetic, like nutrition, exercising, stress management, healthy sleep.
I mean, you can
Uh,
see it just by the change in disease rates over the
mm,
last 50 years. I remember someone saying at a conference I was at that by the year
mhm.
2030, 100% of us would be metabolically unhealthy,
Yeah.
insulin resistant diabetic. I thought that is the most outrageous, crazy statement I've ever heard. And yet, look how close we are to it already. And then you look around, like even in the 1900s, 0.5% of the population in the United States was considered obese, 30 pounds or more
Mm,
overweight. It's now
yeah.
43%. That's not genetics. Genetics that wouldn't happen. That is epigenetics at play.
Yeah, type 2 diabetes, it's not caused by genes.
Who have a higher tendency
Yeah, yeah.
towards certain
Mm-hmm.
things. But does that mean that they have to have the thing? No, that means they have
Yeah.
lower margin for error, right? They have to be more aware of it. Certain races have higher risk of hypertension or insulin resistance. Okay, now or a vitamin D deficiency. You just make sure that you're doing the things. But if you look at the things, really, if you do all the things, if you're getting good sleep, if you're doing something to manage stress, if you're optimizing the basic, if you're optimizing macronutrients and getting enough protein and polyphenols and fiber and optimizing your gut microbiome and moving every day and doing hard things, if you do those things, it's amazing how much corrects itself. But yet, I think when you really would look through the population and say, how many people are doing all of those things, it would probably coincide with how many people are actually at the right body composition and metabolically healthy. Because even just exercise alone, getting what you need in terms of resistance training and cardio, just the CDC guidelines, which are low, it's something like, 24% of adults are actually there.
Yes, and it's scientifically proven that those people who follow healthy lifestyle, nutrition, exercising, sleep, detox, they have more outcomes from advanced biohacking technology than those people who just try to use some advanced cutting edge longevity technologies and they just ignore these natural approach to our health. So once again, I'm very much about technologies and I like to use many devices at home and visit biohacking clinics. And at Ultimate Wellness Conference, we obviously bring selected validated and very powerful biohacking technologies. But at the same time, we emphasize this natural approach to our health and holistic approach to our health, the spirit, emotional, mind, body connection. And I want to know, what do you think, what would be the most critical mindset shift that separates those who thrive and those who decline with age? Like, what is
Oh,
the
I think it's the number one
mindset?
thing, right?
Yeah.
It was interesting. So when my son was 16, he was hit by a car and left for dead in the street. And when we got to the first hospital that he was airlifted to, they told us that we needed to let him go. That he had 13 fractures, he had a torn aorta, and he had multiple brain bleeds. He was in a deep coma. And they said sometime in the next 24 hours, this aorta will rupture and he will die. And in order for him not to have this to happen, we would need to airlift him to the next hospital because it's a very specialized surgery, but he'll never survive the airlift, right? And so they're telling us all this. And the doctor looked at my younger son, who was 15 at the time, and my younger son said, it sounded like maybe he has a 0.25% chance he'd make it. And the doctor said, yeah, that sounds about right. He goes, well, that's not zero. And it was such a reminder of what you focus on expands. All the doctor could see was all the reasons he wouldn't make it. All we saw was that there was less, there was more than zero chance he could make it. And as far as we were concerned, that's what we went for. And I remember standing in the hospital the next day going, Grant, you're going to be 110%. His dad said, let's prove every doctor wrong, which he did. I mean, proved everybody wrong. He'll never walk, he'll never talk, he'll never brought him back from all of it. And I believe that never could have happened if we'd stood there. I know it wouldn't have. If we'd stood there the first night and the doctor said, you need to let him go, and we would have been, oh, okay, the doctor said we need to let him go. Right. And
Right.
that is a huge example, but we make the choice every day. The every day we say, oh, I'm so tired today. And guess what? You're tired all day. It's like this is one of the problems
Yeah.
with the trackers.
Discipline is over even passion. If you are passionate about something, you can do something like intense exercising or just exercising once, two times, and then you give up. But if you have discipline, you continue and you force yourself to move forward, even if you feel uncomfortable doing something today.
I think it's
Uh,
how you see yourself. If you see yourself as an athlete, and as far as I'm concerned, if you have a body, you're an athlete. If you see yourself as a high performer, if you see yourself as excelling, then you do the things,
yeah,
right?
right.
If you're just going to see yourself as getting by, then you do what you need to do to get by.
And
So
it's actually aligned very much with this entrepreneurship mindset, even if you face some challenges, you just go through challenges with the smile on your face, and that's it. We just go
well, I mean,
forward.
come on. Everybody is going to face challenges.
Mhm.
We are never better than when we're challenged. That exposes you for who you are. I remember Wayne Dyer said in one of his books, he says, when you squeeze an orange, you get orange juice. Who you are
Mm.
when you're squeezed is who you really are. It's not who you are on a beautiful day at the beach when everything's fantastic. That's easy. Who you are when things get really rough, that's when it matters. And how we show up, how resilient we are, is what makes all the difference. And that's why we do these things. You lift heavy weights, you get used to doing things that are hard. You go do a
Mm.
cold plunge, you get used to doing things that are uncomfortable. This is the things that we're doing. We're building up our resilience in a time when we have created a society of softies, of life is
Yeah, yeah,
easy.
yeah.
Food's
Yeah.
delivered to you. Your air temperature is always 70. Everything, you've got
Mm.
a Roomba doing your vacuuming. Like you've made life so easy for yourself. And that's why we have to push ourselves and do more hard stuff.
Yeah, so if you could only choose three key factors for improve how we age, what would they be?
Well,
Those
the
key
very first would
factors.
be mindset. Uh,
Yeah, I
you know,
expected
yeah. Well,
that.
there was that study that came out that
Mhm,
showed that people who were excited and positive about aging lived 7.5 years longer than people who weren't.
mhm, mhm.
So the next one would be to
Yeah.
try to pack on as much muscle, and I would say naturally, hormones, peptides, et cetera, but not steroids, right? But to pack on as much possible as you possibly could, as much muscle, which, by the way, if a woman's concerned about getting bulky, you would be lucky if you could pack on 10 pounds of muscle in a year. That would be amazing. It is not easy to do. So that would be the next one. And then the third one to me would be to hang out with people who,
Community. Right.
yeah,
I
to have
agree
an
with you.
amazing community
Yeah.
who thinks this way too.
Mm,
Because the real world, if you think about how few people are actually healthy, I think of them like crabs in a crab pot. You go around those
mm,
people
mm.
with your, working out hard and eating healthy and big plans and big vision and things you want to do in business, and they will be like yanking you into the crab pot.
Right,
You got to
right.
hang out with people who are equally crazy that they believe they can change the world, right?
Yes, yes. Okay, once you so much emphasize this body composition, what's the right food, what right nutrition, what are the main approaches to our nutrition to help us build muscles and have this beautiful body composition, but not only beautiful, obviously, it improves metabolic health. And yeah, what are the best approaches to our nutrition?
So I'm a big fan of really tracking, um, because we tend to underestimate what we eat pretty severely. Even dietitians do this, somewhere in the 25% neighborhood. So what I like to have someone start with is actually using a food scale and a food tracking app. I like Chronometer, and just for a week or two, just track what you eat.
Isn't it too overwhelming? It's like tracking
It
so much.
You know what's overwhelming? Not having the right information, making a decision based
That's
on,
that's true. That's true.
you know,
I
like,
yes.
right? I mean, so if you know that you underestimate what you eat, you aren't quite sure, and
Mm,
you're going to make decisions based on that, then they're faulty decisions.
mhm.
Think about if
Do
you had a budget, like you had money and you had a bank account, but you weren't really tracking what you were spending. You just spent money. You just decided, oh, I've got checks, so I'll just write checks. I've got a credit card. You weren't paying any attention. And you kind of were calculating in your head. You thought you were clear, but you were off by 20%. You had 20%
mhm.
less money than you thought you did. You'd be you'd be in deep doo-doo. But yet we do this with food. Like, come on.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think about genetic tests to identify your genetic predisposition on how we process protein, fat, and carbs? Because many nutritionists, dietitians, they suggest to prioritize protein. Some of them suggest to prioritize fiber. And I think that both statements are correct. I do believe that we need more protein with aging. I also do believe that we need fiber to feed our microbiome and
Yeah.
to feed our healthy microbes and to have this balanced microbiome. But at the same time, what would I suggest and what I do for myself, I do genetic test and I see if I slow oxidizer or fast oxidizer and maybe kind of correct the ratio, not the
Which
amount.
genetic test are you looking at?
I'm looking at True Diagnostics. They are one of our partner, and I did a genetic test, epigenetic test, and True Age. There are three tests.
Hmm.
Now they are going to launch third test. They are our partner, and Hannah went. She will be speaking at the conference as
Oh, that's
well.
fantastic.
Yeah. So I have been trying this test for a while, and I can say that it's good test. So when you do genetic test, you kind of can see how do you process some micronutrients and macronutrients,
Yeah, and if you're
which
deficient in some things, and if you've got,
yes.
if you've got anything going on with fat digestion, maybe you've got what's going on with ApoE4. So I think all of
Exactly.
these things are important.
Mhm.
And it was interesting. I was doing a talk somewhere and someone tells, oh, my nutritionist told me I'm allergic to protein. I go, if you were allergic to protein, you would be dead.
Yes,
You
exactly.
know,
No,
you
no, maybe to some kind of protein
some kinds.
because
And I think
yeah.
this is how these things get out there, where I was like, all right, well, you literally can't be allergic to protein. You are allergic to a
Mm,
specific protein. Yes. And
correct.
food sensitivities are very common. However, usually it's because of leaky gut. So what I think,
Exactly. Food
you know,
sensitivity suggests inflammation in your gut. And I
yeah,
also
so
do
that's
this
right.
MRT food sensitivity test. And we cannot identify which foods we are sensitive to unless we perform this blood test because those reactions to food which we are sensitive to, they can be delayed far downstream
I
after
wrote a
we
book on
eat.
this
Yeah.
called The Virgin Diet like
Mm.
12 years
Oh,
ago.
I
And I
didn't
was
know.
considered crazy at the time. Um,
Yeah, cool.
so
It's now
so
not.
here's the reality, I think. I
Mm.
think that if you just could start,
Mm.
it's great to do the genetic testing because the genetic piece won't change. What I would love to have someone do is they can do genetic testing so they can make those shifts and then really dial in that diet. And yes, I'm adamant, like if I'm going to work with someone, they must track their food. I won't
Mhm.
work with them otherwise. And is it a
Mhm.
hassle? It is at first, but then it's very fast because your app's going to learn what you eat. And most people eat the same stuff all the time anyway. But the awareness as you start to track your food that you actually had no idea some of the things you were putting in your mouth or the things you weren't getting is amazing. I don't really know
Mm.
how to help someone without that. And so that to me is always a step one is that audit to really see what's going in your mouth. Because I don't care what test you take, if you're eating a bunch of good, too much food, whether it's healthy or not, too much healthy food's unhealthy. Calorie toxicity has got to go somewhere. Now, if it's too
Mhm.
much protein, it's going to be harder to gain fat off of that. But if it's too much carbs or fat, way easier to store those, right? So that's the first thing is I think we do need to track what we're eating. And
Wh-
I do think
wh-
prioritizing protein is important too, and I'm with you.
When you
On
say when you
fiber.
say prioritize protein, you definitely mean complete protein, and it's mostly from animal food, right?
So I believe that all diets are tools and that people have taken
Mm-hmm.
them on as religions. I think that I'm with you we're probably very omnivore-ish and protein
Mm-hmm.
plus plants. However, if I have someone who is insistent for spiritual, religious reasons,
Mm-hmm.
if it's for
Mm-hmm.
health reasons, like let's blow this up, like let's
Yeah.
be honest, there were no vegans in the wild. They died of nutrient deficiencies, just things like B12 and carnitine and taurine and getting all the essential amino acids. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to help someone get all the essential aminos they need from plants alone without overloading their
Okay.
calories,
Mm-hmm.
unless we're
Mm-hmm.
using a lot of protein powders, right? So
No, amino acids also we can supplement
yeah,
some
I mean,
good brands.
if someone has to be a plant-based person for whatever reason, then we're going to use essential amino acids, and we're definitely going to make sure you're on creatine and take some carnitine and B12 and taurine and use good protein powders. Well, you can do it. You can
All
pull it.
at once, all at once, amino acids,
So what
creatine.
I would do, well, I do this anyway, but I think essential amino acids are great considering
Mm-hmm.
that most women are under eating protein. So that's why people eat protein first to make sure they're getting what they need. But in the absence of that, essential amino acids can help, or they can help if you're recovering from surgeries, if you are, sedentary, etc. Creatine's another one women tend to be deficient in anyway. If you're a vegan, you're of course deficient in it. It's from meat, and
Yes,
fish.
yes.
Um, And of course, things like B12, carnitine from meat. So those are the things that I would look at. But in general, I think, we're omnivores.
Mhm.
We've always been omnivores. So I look back to our ancestry and go to closest nature as possible, eat whole foods, I think a carnivore diet can be an interesting healing diet, kind of an elimination diet, but I really think we need the fiber for the microbiome and the polyphenols. And while you get a little polyphenols from animals, the majority of them really are from plants, and the diversity of them is from plants. So I think that American Gut Project with the 30 or more servings of plants, some of that coming from spices and herbs, is a great rule to follow.
Yeah, so if I understand you correct, you would suggest prioritize complete protein and fiber and less carbs.
So
I don't say exclude carbs because carbs, fiber is a group of carbs, right? So I think that we just need to eat healthy carbs
I
and
think with the
healthy
carbs,
fat.
it's where you really want to get as close to nature as possible. Because when you
Yeah,
think about it, where we get in trouble with carbs are not
processed food.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not
Mhm.
berries and lentils.
Exactly.
It's bean
Yeah.
chips,
Yes.
and rice
Mm.
cakes and cereal and garbage. So if you look at the carbs and go, I'm going to eat the majority of my carbs from non-starchy veggies, some berries and fruit. One or like I don't think most people 2 servings of fruit is about where you should be. Little bit of slow low carbs, maybe things like lentils or I'm not much of a grain person, so I really tend to do more things like black beans or lentils or I do purple sweet potatoes, but not a whole lot of that. I tend to do more vegetables and fruit, and then a little
What
bit of healthy fat. It's easy. That's it.
healthy fat, of course. Of course. We all know that we need to exclude seed oils, vegetable oils, and olive oil is the best, coconut oil. And I try to avoid avocado oil because they usually add something else to avocado oil, and usually, yeah, like olive oil, the best, the healthiest choice.
Yeah, we
And
just stay with olive oil. It's just easier. Olive oil and ghee. That's what we use at our house.
exactly.
A little sesame oil every once in a while for cooking Asian food. And sesame seed oil is not one of the hateful eight. It doesn't create the toxic byproducts that you do from like canola and corn and cottonseed and safflower and sunflower.
Mhm.
I think we need to delay breakfast a little bit, like an hour,
Mhm.
probably 2 hours after. Like my sweet spot, if you could design your schedule perfectly, you'd get up, meditate. This is when I like to do my hot and cold, do a little bit of movement, and then have some breakfast. Then I like to go to the gym a little bit after that. But if you could perfectly time it, I'd say 90 minutes to 2 hours after waking up. I am not a fan of waiting till noon and having the noon to 8
Mhm.
time. I think we need to eat during the bulk of the light time. And I'm a big proponent of breakfast, just not breakfast right when you wake up.
Yeah, I
So,
actually do
yeah.
this exactly this schedule. Well, so along with nutrition, obviously exercising another important pillar to build our muscles. If we think about exercising, what you recommend, and especially after 40s, especially for females, what do you
So,
recommend?
first thing that I do is have people track how much they move each day,
Mhm.
because there is a tendency when we start exercising more or cutting calories to move less overall. When you look at our metabolism, it's dictated by our resting metabolic rate plus our energy of food, which is protein's going to help the most there, plus our activity, of which we have non-exercise activity and exercise. And what our body will tend to do, a lot of our calories, like the biggest change we can really make is in this non-exercise activity, just how much you move throughout the day. So I always start with people just tracking that, with the floor being 8,000 a day and really trying to get that floor up to 10 or 12,000 steps a day. I'm looking at this right now going, and where is mine today?
Mhm.
And I've lifted my floor up this year. And then next thing is to do resistance training. And
Mhm.
ideally, the bare minimum is 2 days a week. I really like people to do it more in the 3 to 4 times a week. Big compound movements, upper body pushing, upper body pulling, hips and thighs. And once someone gets used to doing it, then I start to add some strength and power moves into it as well, because they're a little different. And then 2 to 3 days a week of high intensity interval training. And that is, there's a variety of ways to do high intensity interval training, but basically the goal with that is that you are getting lactate to build so that you trigger new mitochondria being made in your heart and in your brain. And you're also burning visceral fat, you're creating an oxygen debt, and you're improving your VO2 max, which is the biggest predictor of all, of all cause mortality and lifespan is VO2 max. So that's where I like to have people start and focus is move more, then add resistance training, making sure you don't take down that NEAT, and then add in that HIIT training. And then
Mhm.
once you got all that dialed in, you do the thing I hate the most, which is yoga.
Okay, usually all people stuck with yoga and do less resistance training
Right.
and
Flip
less
that.
HIIT. But HIIT is probably the best for improving metabolic health. It's also
No, I wouldn't
center
say that. I don't think
resistance.
so.
Resistance training is
Well, think
is
about it. Resistance training is really
Mhm.
HIIT training done correctly because it's high
Yeah.
intensity. And,
Mhm.
what I've been putting together, if someone's really short on time, there was some research that came out that showed vigorous intermittent lifestyle physical activity, little 1 to 2 minute bursts done to accumulate 4.5 to 10 minutes of total bursts a day, reduced all-cause mortality 40 to 50%. So I thought to myself, what if we could do high intensity functional training that
Mhm.
created some hypertrophy, power, and strengthened muscles and triggered that lactate. So you would do like maybe a minute of air squats or 30 seconds of box jumps, and then you would do something easy in between, and then you would do maybe some up downs for a minute, and then something easy in between, maybe some mountain climbers. So that's what I've been doing for a lot of my high intensity work is I've been doing like these functional moves
Mhm.
that are power moves, kettlebell swings and snatches and things like that.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned this functional training, and I think that jumping, squats with jumping, or any kind of jumps, they also improve our joints. So
Yes.
I also try to incorporate some jumps and functional movement when we contract, not separate muscle, but kind of the whole body in movement, and maybe a little bit
Just
of
how we
balance.
move, right? So I love
Mhm.
jumping. And I think there's this tendency as we age, it's like, oh, don't do that. It's like, oh no, we need
Yeah,
to. I
yeah,
gotta,
exactly. That's
right?
why I decided to mention this because also often I have heard that like, yeah, with aging, less jumping, but I would say more
Mm-mm.
jumping. Yeah.
It is just that thing. If you think about it, the less you do, the less you can do. The more you do, the more you can do. I realized that as you age, you actually have to work out harder than before, not less. So, and you have to do it carefully because you don't want to get injured. But I really think that where we get injured, we work out, we train in the gym to get better at life. And if you're working out hard in the gym, you will be less likely to get injured out in the world because most of our injuries are going to happen when we're doing regular life and we go to grab something or move too quickly and we, you know, pick up something wrong. Like I can't tell you how many times working with people, they would reach back into their back seat to pick something up and tear their rotator cuff. So, it's
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I also like think that we should build our resilience in the gym and just doing some exercises so then we will not be injured in normal like everyday
Right.
life,
And
right?
Pilates and yoga as your sole thing with some walking is not going to cut it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
yeah,
enough,
exactly.
and
For
it's
me,
like that's the
for me,
message.
yoga always was like spiritual practice. I wouldn't think about yoga as about even exercising. It's more about reconnecting with your higher self, more like meditation and just a little bit tuning in into flow state. It's not exercising. I'm so thankful to you for joining me today and answering all my questions and empowering your community. And thank you for being on a mission to empower many people to age powerfully and continue to live this active, vital, and happy life. So yeah, thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to have you with us at the Ultimate Wellness Conference at Faena Forum in Miami Beach on September 26, 27, 28, 2025. It's 3-day longevity conference where we empower our community with holistic wellness practices and science-based longevity strategies. Obviously, join us in person and explore cutting-edge biohacking technologies and immerse yourself in fascinating, transformative wellness experiences such as meditations, breathwork, sound healing with the orchestra. Join us to learn from first hands and yeah, this was great.
Sound healing with an orchestra.
Yes, sound
Oh my
healing with an
goodness.
orchestra.
That's
Miami
so
South Beach.
amazing. That is amazing.